Hello and welcome back to A Little Crazy. I'm just about to finish the templating of this front window surround. I don't know if you can see that too well actually, because the sun's at the other side of the boat, so it's very bright. But I was going to try and do this in two sections, which would be a C section around there and then the same with the other side. But because of the shape that the boat is, it's because it can come closer and you can see that shape. That's the front of the screen, it's the center of the screen there. Because of that shape, I wasn't able to do it out of one piece straight off. So what I've done is I've done one straight piece across the top and one straight piece across the bottom. That also didn't work out because of the shape of the front. So what was happening is I was getting one side lined up, and then when it got to here it just came out a million miles, probably about 3 or 4 inches. So what I've ended up doing now, remembering this is just a template, so what I've done now is I've cut this piece into two, and you can see very large gap there. So when I finalise it, obviously I want to lose that gap, so I'll cut these pieces a little bit longer, and then I'll mark and cut one of them, and then lay the other one underneath, mark and cut it so that they butt up to each other. Do the same with the bottom end. These are the two down here that I've got to go across the bottom. And then when I've done those, it'll be down to doing this edge piece here, which is, as you can see, very thin. You can see that's only half a thumb length. I don't know, I'd like to be able to do it like the others and cut it out in one piece, but yeah, it's a bit tricky. It's a bit tricky, so we'll see how it goes. I might actually frame it, put a wood frame round the window instead, and then tidy it up that way. But you know, we'll try various ways, and then we'll pick the best way. So there's the top by the sea. There's quite a large gap up that side. I can reduce that when I make the final piece. As you see these marks on here in pencil, I'm going to have a channel coming across there for LED, and that's where it'll come down to. And because it's a recessed channel, it'll actually be holding the ceiling up in the centres, and then on that side there'll be an LED light going up. Anyway, so I'll carry on playing about with these and try and get them to fit nice and snug, ready for the main piece. In the meantime, you can see how I cut out the main final piece of plywood for that, the one that's going to be vinyl that goes over the top, hides all the screws. Okay, I'll see you in a minute. I need to cut this top sheet of ply out now, the one that's going to be vinyled over this window. I need to cut this out so that I can do the front properly. What I'm going to try and do, as I've mentioned before, is do all of this area in one piece. Now I'm not expecting miracles, and I'm not expecting it to go first time, so what I've done is marked it all out on a little diagram with the measurements there, and I'm going to cut out the shape of it first all around the outside. So I've got the actual shape, bring it back in here, offer it up to the wall, make sure the actual shape is correct before I do the window. And if my measurements are correct on here, which I'll know whether they're out or not by how the outside goes, then I can cut the centerpiece out, bring it back in again. Now it will need trimming down at some stage, I know, because I'm not sure how thick the wrap on the vinyl is going to be around the edges. Depends what vinyl I get, so it might need to say a 2mm gap, might need a 3mm gap around the outsides, so that the vinyl can be wrapped over it at the back and stapled or stuck on. So once this is done, it'll just sit there till we're ready to vinyl, and then we'll do a test piece and see how much distance I need to take off, and that will be done by a sander, because it's very very light stuff. This is going to be 3.6 on this wall, so let's get on with that then. Back in the workshop, I need to get this ply now all marked up and cut out for that left hand side window. If I can do it in one piece, great. If not, back to the drawing board and we'll have a look what else we can do. Right, so what I've got here now is the basic shape of that wall. Hopefully it's fairly close to what I need it. The window is marked out. You can't see it very well, I suppose. The window is marked out on there. I'll make it a more broad line once I go to cut, but I'll take it inside and see how far off we are at the moment. So I brought the wood in, offered it up to where it's going. You can see the side it's going on. Now it all looks fairly good. The trouble is, because it's such a long board and I'm on my lonesome, I can't hold it in place to check every area, and I can't grip it with anything without it slipping down. I mean, I've got clamps and things, but I can't put those on because it keeps slipping down on one side. But as far as I can tell, it all looks good right along. The only place that differs would be up on this top corner, slightly shy of that board. It comes down square with this window edge here, and this part of the roof dips in. But once that wood goes onto that side, it's going to straighten all that up. So I'll probably pack out this bit here where it dips in, some sort of epoxy filler I expect, just so that it's going to hold the wood nicely in place. But right, so I'll have to leave this for the moment, as I say, until I get a second pair of hands, because I need to get it in place properly so I can remeasure again for the window, which you can just see the marks there. And if they all still check okay, then I will cut that bit out and go for that bit. See how that works. May have noticed actually while I've been in here that the hatch has changed colour. It's now got its first coat of top coat. Unfortunately, this sheet that I bought, and I spoke to the company about my last sheet I had on here, which was leaking in water, and they assured me that this one would last at least a year, right through winter, no problems. But unfortunately it does leak like a sieve, and you can see down there where it's actually been dripping through the hatch. So it's not too clever, but yeah, so there's the hatch. Obviously once that hatch goes on, then it'll stop any water coming in there anyway. But that's got to have at least 3 more coats on that, sanding down in between, possibly even 4 coats actually, because I want to give it a good polish up afterwards. But that's for another time. But you can see the colour it's going to go, as opposed to the grey blue that it was. That's the colour of the finished boat there, and as you can see, it's near enough the colour of that seat back in there. All that seat's going to be replaced, but the back end will be cleaned up like new. Well, I've managed to hold this panel up in place this morning. It all looks okay. I'll push it back to the wall. I have got play around all the edges, so they don't have to be bob on, because of the materials that are meeting up to them. It's this lower edge that needs to be straight, which it is, I've taken the measurements again for the edges. That was the original line I marked incorrectly. That's the main line. They look correct. And the same at the other end. Now I think I need to come off that 385 there, draw another line up to meet the top, which is correct. So hopefully when I do cut this piece out, that window section will sit in nicely. As I said, if it doesn't, I'll have to use it as a template and redo it. But I don't like to waste wood, so hopefully it's right first time. I was going to template it with a roll of card, but unfortunately the card wasn't high enough. Obviously very awkward to do that as well, so we're doing it the hard way round. Let's see how we go with this. Okay, so I've now cut the centre section out. This end obviously is the problematic end because it's so thin. There you go. Now I've just got to manoeuvre this back up onto the boat. Bit awkward because the sheet is still on the boat at the moment. Can't take it off because it keeps raining. So, but yeah, that's the end. If it's going to break, it's going to be down there. But we'll try to keep it in one piece. Pull the wood back in after cutting the centre out for the window. I'm pleased with that. We knew it was going to be tight around the window because I measured it bob on. Because I didn't know the thickness of the vinyl that's going on. So what I'll do is I'll sand the edges free to allow the vinyl to go around it once I know the vinyl size. But yeah, so that's how it'll be. I'm happy with that. There's no visible screws and it's all in its place. Before I finalise the cuts around the edges there and temporarily fix it in place, because it will sit there now for quite some time before I'm ready for vinyl, what I will do is coat it back and front with a resin just to stiffen it up a bit, and especially make that area there stronger, because that's the dodgy part. For when I'm, it's all right when it's sitting in situ, but when I'm moving it about to work on it, it's quite a weak piece of ply. Well, the light's gone the opposite way now, so now it's getting a bit dark, but to be honest, I have taken ages to do this. Probably not the easiest thing to do in the first place anyway. Perhaps I was just being a bit too adventurous with it. Should have put a frame around it. Anyway, got the front wood on now. It's only rough, obviously. It's all got to be trimmed round the window edges, making sure I've got enough room for the vinyl. Probably down there as well, because that's too tight. If you imagine there's two lots of vinyl, one on this one and one on that one, and they've got to meet in the middle, so a bit off there. Definitely down this centre one there. As you can see, that needs trimming down. Take a piece off the one laying on top. Around the edges as well. I've just held it up at the moment with clamps and a couple of screws through from the other side just to pin it in place so I can see what I've got to do to it. But we'll get in there. So once I tidy that all up and it's in place, then I can move on to the next job. Okay, so this is it for the trim panels now. Put the sides back on, sanded down the fronts, made them all meet. Side panel back on that side as well, so as yet no visible screws. There will be, as I said before, screws along the front one, because I'm going to attach that, because it doesn't recess in so much as these side windows. I'm going to attach that in the old way, but I am going to put a curtain rail along where the screws were, top and bottom, so that will hide it. The ones down the side there, there'll be about 2 or 3 down that side on the front window. They will be visible, but again they'll be behind the curtain gathering, so you won't actually see them. Again, curtain rail along that one, light up the top, LED light to hold the ceiling up. Can't do anything more on this now because I've got to do that hatch, got to get the windows in, and I've got to get painting. Front windows are now laying in place. Fixing these in with butyl. It's a very good sealant for it. It's very easy to put on. This one's already done. Just needs tightening up in a few days. I know you can't see that too well because of the light in here. This one's just laying in recess. I ran out of butyl when I started doing these, so I had to order some more. I've now got that, but I need someone on the outside to hold the screws while I do the nuts up. In the centre it's going to have butyl between these, you see that gap there, and then it has a plate coming down the outside of the screen, and that'll all be butyl sealed in as well. As I say, this is very good stuff. This is the stuff here, comes on a roll. It always stays soft, so what you do is you put it around the frame and then you tighten up probably about half as much as what you need to and let it squeeze out. It'll squeeze out over a period of time, so you don't have to do it in one go. Just come back to it a few days later and then give it another little tighten until it's at your desired position, and then you just take the excess off using a plastic knife or edging or something like that. But it's very good stuff. The only downside to this is you can't get anything like diesel or thinners or anything like that on it because it'll degrade it. But apart from that, it's brilliant stuff. So I'm going to call this an episode now. What I've got to do next, I've got to put the holes. There's 3 holes going here, 8mm into the ceiling. That's for the top rails on this roof. Same with the other side. 3 holes over there. I've got to do those before I can paint, because I don't want to put the rails on after I'm I don't want to put the rails on before I paint and then have to tape them up and everything. So I'm going to drill the holes, paint the ceiling, just paint the roof. It's got to have a few more coats of paint on it, yeah. So do that. Then once that's all painted, dried nicely, hopefully I've got a few days of good weather, then I can put the bars on, tighten them up, and then the ceiling can go on in here. I've also got, see it, I've got all the rails, the channels for the LED lights, which are going to go along the top edges, as I said, to hold the ceiling. And right now I've got to think about where all this wiring's going. I've already put the nav light wiring in there. You can see it hanging out there. There's lights going underneath there, out the front. Control panel up there. Probably inside and up in the ceiling of the roof there'll be a couple of buzz bars, and that's to feed the electrics down to the sink area with the fridge and the water pump and things like that, plus extra lighting. So that's all got to be done now really before I put any more panels in. Okay, I'll catch you on the next one. Thanks for watching.